Chapter 19, Detaching the Realm of the Regions. Nekemabed entered the temple with a heavy heart. "It is done. They are eternally separated," he said in a heart-rending tone. Some called out our name as I left. Cries of remorse echoed through the chambers. Tears filled his eyes. "It is not our doing, Nekemabed," Jerahab gently reminded him. "None of them were ignorant of their choice. They knew they were eternal beings, and our sealing was clearly taught." Nekemabed inhaled and then spoke with mixed emotions. "All is in place. Let us call forth the realm of the regions and move a step closer to ending this age." "Wait," Jerahab said. He reached to the right side of the throne and retrieved the Book of Tabnethiod. "I recovered this just before Sar's palace was destroyed." Kohengal and Nekemabed fervidly looked upon the book that they had actively participated in creating. "I am glad we never revealed the mysteries of this book to Sar," exclaimed Nekemabed. "Sar did find the book, but it was too late. He had given himself over to the Zood and its wisdom, which prevented him from learning the book's meaning," ensured Jerahab. "It is now time we separate the book." The three showed enthusiasm, for they had all anticipated this moment. Jerahab lifted the book above his head. Kohengal and Nekemabed gathered around him. The book illuminated as it had on so many occasions. Jerahab closed his eyes and thought on the multitude of names that he had once held within his palms. Nekemabed blew toward its cover, producing a wind that swirled around the book, while Kohengal gave the word, "Separate." A flash of light filled the throne room while Jerahab, Kohengal, and Nekemabed matched the book's intense glow. Jerahab placed his right hand over the Book of Tabnethiod and drew a collection of words from the text. As the words came forth from the book, they struck the palm of Jerahab's hand and spread outward, forming the structures of a separate book. The cover was white with crimson-red lettering. Jerahab took the book and presented it to Kohengal. "In this book are the names of those in the Second Age. Among them are the honorable that will one day rule and reign with you. Do you accept this book?" Kohengal took the book without hesitation and held it close to his heart. The realization of its significance was overwhelming. "I humbly accept this book and the responsibility that it brings." He then placed the book next to the throne, where it was to remain until the appointed time. With Kohengal's comment, he and Nekemabed stepped to the throne. The room swirled and all of the cherubim turned their eagle faces toward them. The next image was Or sitting on the throne and the cherubim back in their original positions, the room filled with a sweet fragrance. Or sat upon the throne with no movement. The seraphim stirred the air and sang his praises. The Elenthial host had returned to their quarters as instructed. The streets of Elenthial were quiet. In the Elenthial hall, though no one was looking, the table of happenings revealed that the cosmos was empty of movement. All of the rocks had been hurled and laid in their predetermined positions. The stones of fire no longer bore Sar's symbols and were barren. Only Sidon on a dam had sections preserved. There was no breeze or rippling water. The cosmos was at a complete standstill. Or continued to sit in thought. "Now!" The words shot forth from his mouth. The children were pushed back into their seats by the power of the word. They could see the space around the throne ripple like a massive splash in water. It moved out in a wave. Their screen split. The small screen showed them outside of the universe within the great unknown. As they looked down on Elenthial, they could see the sky ripple like an atomic blast. The ground quaked as the wave encircled the sphere, then merged in the realm of the regions. The larger screen had the children riding the first wave of the cry. The scenery rushed underneath them as they rocketed forward. When they arrived at the realm of the regions, they made a sharp turn into the region's lobby. The scene was so realistic that many of the children threw their hands up to protect their faces from the fabric lashing forward on the screen. Then the four doors simultaneously broke open, showcasing the magnificent beings that had been patiently waiting for this infamous moment. At the eastern door the lion stood, looking out. The southern door exhibited the man holding onto both sides of the frame. In the western door, the children witnessed a pair of oxen grinning at them. And in the northern, the eagle stood alone, leaning slightly out of the door. "I feel sorry for the eagle," Mia said. "Me too," Megan answered. Mickley shot his sister and Megan a look of irritation. "I can't believe you are talking." "Shh!" The wave the children were riding had subsided. The smaller screen displayed the great unknown. Then the image changed to a panoramic view of the region's lobby, revealing to the children that each door was attached to one of the four corners of the fabric. Suddenly, the main screen took the children into the cosmos, which was the opposite direction. The realm of the regions was moving. The regions were pulled back into Elenthial and rapidly headed toward the temple. But the children were now traveling with the access fabric of the southern region for one last mission inside the cosmos. The children held on to their seats. They were headed directly toward afar. The coolness of the darkened cosmos seemed to stream across their faces. Their magic carpet ride made a sharp hairpin curve as the traveling fabric whizzed past them and collided into the invisible door. With a snap of the cloth, the door burst open and water came rushing out. Or had used the excess fabric of the southern region to finalize the judgment on afar. "Hey!" yelled one of them. The picture froze just as it had once before. Rashawn did not know how it had happened, but was relieved that he was allowed to pause. He moistened his lips as he looked around the theater. "What? Is everybody okay?" Rashawn asked, concerned about the recent cry. "It is all happening so fast. We are in the cosmos, but look at the small screen," Rachel stated, drawing their attention to the frozen image of the flapping material sailing across the skies of Elenthial. As they all stared at it, the picture shrunk and disappeared. "Did she do that?" asked Simon. "No," Rashawn answered. "There is a reason the screen closed. We will see it again, but as a whole event. We have a chapter break. Are there any questions about what you are seeing?" Rashawn asked, trying to use the break to the fullest. "I have one," said Morris. "I know we just rode on Orr's call across Elenthial, but what was that for?" "The call we just witnessed was for the realm of the regions to detach, as well as to signal for the southern region to open the floodgates over afar," Rashawn explained. "But we saw Bashan and his men look behind the door. Our screen even revealed there was nothing back there," Morris challenged. This statement caused the other children to think back. After a few seconds, they were all nodding their heads in agreement with Morris. "Yeah, remember the Abirs touched it and reported it was cold and damp, but nobody said anything about that much water," added Rachel. Rashawn listened to their comments as they bounced ideas off each other. He hoped his silence would give them an opportunity to discover the truth without his input. "Maybe the water wasn't there yet," Mia commented. "Oh, maybe Orr had not put the water there yet because Rahab had not exploded. So there was no fires to put out yet," Alyssa piped in. Megan sat quietly thinking out the possibilities. Alyssa's remark did not make sense to her. She replied, "Then why didn't the water flood all of the stones of fire? Fires were burning on all of them from Rahab's explosion." "I am not convinced the water has anything to do with the fires burning on afar," Aaron began to respond. "I think it is much more significant than that. My father told me once of how our afar was flooded. I hope we get to see that part of the story of old. I think the two floods are linked somehow. From what I have seen in this age, I don't think the water was a consequence of Rahab's blowing up." "It has to be a dimensional thing," Joshua jumped in. He had come to this conclusion at the beginning of the conversation, but figured Rashawn would be explaining it to the group. "The door must be between dimensions, or within one that is hidden from the cosmos, just like Rashawn explained to us during the assembly in Sar's palace." Rashawn was pleased with the children's discussion. "Aaron, you are catching on. We must take what we know and not assume that any event in our history or future stands independently. I am sure we will uncover a multitude of links between the three ages as we continue on this journey. It is important that we keep in mind that the first age is setting the stage and establishing clues for patterns we will find." Rashawn looked down at the book, not sure what part of the current events the next chapter held, but he was eager to find out. "Let us move to the next chapter and hopefully we can follow it." The screen flashed and they could clearly see afar. The water erupted out of the door and rushed toward afar. It crashed onto the backside of the stone of fire and swiftly gathered into the fissure on the east side. The fissure was engulfed first. The rest of the stone quickly followed. Those confined in Sheol heard the water beating on the exposed section of the fissure. With the noise came an additional darkness. Even the glare from the burning flames of the fire within diffused as the water enveloped the stone. They felt its weight and found their movement was limited. The rest of the cosmos was untouched by the water, afar set without form and void. Soon darkness would visit its waters. Or decided to return to the Elenthial Hall. He rose from his throne and stepped forward, only to hear the joyful sound of the rushing wind from the realm of the region's arrival. Or walked out to welcome the region's occupants. "Welcome," Or sang out. "Your next move will be into the cosmos. It excites me to have you bear witness of me in the next age. I will direct you to your heavenly patterns and provide you with details for your mission. For now, enjoy Salem and await my orders. They will come soon." "My lord, I have a task. May I fulfill it?" the eagle squawked out. "By all means. You will find what you are looking for beyond the vineyard outside of the northern gate of Salem," Or replied. He left the unique angelics to themselves as he headed for the hall. The eagle stepped out of the doorway and stretched his wings to the fullest span. He had not been out of the northern region since Or had moved them to the southern section of Elenthial. He had ample opportunities to fly inside the region, but his foreknowledge of the serpent's departure kept him on high alert before the altar. That is why the eagle and the serpent were always together. Now he was able to leave the altar with the assurance that all was well. The eagle soared high above Salem. The grounds were beautiful. From his position, he could see the tops of the gemmed mountains in the northern sector. It encouraged him to see the throne of the one whose power he demonstrated. After a short stint of exercise, he zoned in on the northern city gate and spotted the small prison for Sar and his companion. "Where is he?" he questioned as he looked into the prison walls. He has become just as grotesque as his new master. The eagle recognized the serpent's transformation for what it was: evil. Sar and the dragon's attention were drawn to the sky, where the eagle let out a loud cry. The dragon puffed up his back in order to show off his new size and stood erect to challenge his old companion. The eagle's wings mimicked the dragon's size, and his talons sprung sharp razors from their tips. He swooped down upon the dragon's back and struck his talons through the iron scales. The dragon twisted and roared. He had no power in Elenthial. The eagle dug deep, injecting that section of the dragon's back with Or's light, and then pulled his talons straight out. The dragon's roar filled Salem as the eagle flew upward with his talons tucked under him as if carrying an object. The children realized from the dragon's and Sar's expressions that the eagle must have been carrying something interesting. Sar stared, puzzled, for the eagle had withdrawn a serpent from the dragon's back. It was a smaller version of his original form. As the eagle flew away, he tossed the small serpent into the air. The children became alarmed when they recognized the serpent figure. The eagle then caught it in his beak. The image of the eagle catching the serpent was so graphic to the children that it stuck in most of their minds and would be easily recognized in the second age. The eagle paraded the small serpent in his mouth over the skies of Salem. Those that looked up smiled at the implication of his display, for they all had heard that his partner had followed Sar. The eagle returned to his region, eager for the next set of instructions. The angelics from the other 3 regions gawked at the miniature serpent he was carrying. He chose to stand in the doorway, ready to present Or with this accomplishment. Or was now standing in front of the table of happenings. He called up an image that was black and formless. It was clear that it was the waves and cosmos. With a strong sigh, he lowered the image back into the table. Or stepped out of his command post into the portico. Shatar walked up. Or extended his hand with his palm upward. As Shatar looked into his palm, a key manifested. Beyond the vineyard, Sar can be found locked inside of a small prison. "This is the key to unlock the door. Bring him to me," insisted Or in a solemn tone. "Yes, your majesty." Shatar turned and headed northward. The noise from the occupants of the realm of the regions could be heard over the silence of the city. Or closed his eyes and could see the Asoavel stifling his creation in the cosmos and the waves. Afar was now a black mass, and the waves shadowed its blackness. Drawing his fist back, Or spoke loudly, "Depart," and thrust his fist forward toward the lower part of Salem. Inside the cosmos, Or's word created a hole that broke through the antimatter which laid on the outer perimeter of the outer edge. A large external pocket was formed. "That looks like one of those punching bags from the Ophanim's mouth," said Simon. When the children heard Or's command, it was followed by a loud crashing sound. Their screen zoomed out into the great unknown, again providing the perspective of looking at a model. They watched Or's hand reach out through the universe and into the great unknown. He took hold of a gigantic pouch that was used to collect the Soavel outside of the universal sphere. He pulled the pouch up to the sphere's edge and attached it, creating a type of external pocket. This view allowed an all-inclusive look at the protruding pouch from the sphere. The screen split in half and removed the zoomed-out scene. One half of the screen now showed the outer pouch, and the other half showed the inside of the cosmos. The Soavel inside the cosmos was now moving toward the newly formed hole in the perimeter of the outer edge. The gray mist was being funneled out. The Soavel from the waves was cleared first. Then the remaining Soavel began to drain out of the cosmos. As it approached afar, the gray mist parted and traveled around the waves, leaving the stone untainted. The waves pressed down on the blackened stone, confining the waters of judgment. Through the second screen, the children understood the meaning of Or's command. The pouch grew as the cosmos emptied. By the end of the process, the cosmos was empty of all the Zood residue and Soavel. The pouch had expanded to contain it all. The hole was drawn closed by a type of enormous drawstring separating Or's creation from Sar's perversion. Once again, the theater screen changed. Or stood with a tiny string tied around his finger. The string was identical to one that had closed the hole. Facing west, Or stretched his arm out. The children could actually see two hands, one in the northern portion and one in the southern portion of the outer edge. He then began to move his arms slowly toward each other. As he did, the children could see the outer edge being pulled over the antimatter gap and then continued to close in toward the waves. It moved like a camera lens closing. "Why did Or pull in the outer edge?" asked Rachel. "Yeah, and why didn't it cover afar?" added Mia. Rashawn was glad that Mia noticed the outer edge had not covered afar, but was simply pulled up to the stone. The children recognized this beautiful darkness from before. The screen changed again and focused on the cosmos, with a smaller screen showing Or still in the portico. There was no sound from Or's scene, but the children could see that he was speaking. The main screen produced a loud hissing noise that was coming from the western portion of the outer edge. As they looked toward the noise, a gust of wind and a wretched smell shot through the theater. The portal had been reopened and the empty cosmos began to fill with the Soavel. The beautiful velvet darkness of the outer edge dulled as the Soavel recovered it. The small screen where Or stood changed once again to the great unknown. All of the blackness of the Soavel streamed into the cosmos. There was no longer any substance outside of the universe. The great unknown had been cleared. Shatar arrived at the small prison where Sar was being held. He could hear sounds of banging and scratching from inside. As he extended the key toward the lock, the noise from inside stopped. "Who is there?" was the demand from the other side of the door. Shatar hesitated at the sound of Sar's chilling voice. He reminded himself that his king was the creator of all and therefore superior in power. Or had sent him fully prepared for this task. "I know someone is there," barked Sar. Shatar took a deep breath and continued unlocking the door. Unbeknownst to Shatar, Sar had moved to the opposite side of the room and was charging the door. Shatar flung the door open just as Sar had reached it, causing Sar to fall out onto the ground. At first, Shatar gasped in anticipation of what Sar would look like. However, he was surprised at what lay on the ground in front of him. "I was rattled by that? This is the great leader of the enemy force?" Shatar thought. He immediately closed and locked the door, leaving the dragon inside. Sar quickly rose to his feet, his eyes locked on Shatar's. "I do not suppose you have come to join me, Shatar. That will never happen. I have come to bring you to the Elenthial Hall, or will see you now," Shatar calmly stated. "You mean Jerahab?" No, I mean Or. He is in his full glory." Shatar squinted at Sar for the odd inquiry. Sar staggered for a moment at the realization that Kohengal was not bound in the earth of afar. How could this have happened? My throne was above him, and I would have seen him escape. The Ofen must have taken him too. There was no more conversation between them as Shatar promptly headed toward the Elenthial Hall with the prisoner in hand. Or had moved into the Elenthial Hall when Shatar arrived with Sar. Shatar examined the room. "I have left the dragon in the prison cell. Here is the one you have called for." For the first time, Shatar fully recognized Sar as his defeated enemy. Or was saddened to see what had become of the angelic that once held the highest position in his kingdom. Sar's face and form had become a distortion of what Or had created. "Well done, Shatar. You may wait outside for your next assignment. I will speak to Sar alone." "Very well," Shatar complied with a hint of disappointment. He did not want to miss the conversation. Sar stood before Or in the Elenthial Hall, wondering what had become of Abaddon and Azazel, as well as the rest of his army. Intercepting Sar's thoughts, Or stated, "Abaddon has been imprisoned along with the other Isham you sent to brand the cosmos. They will be bound until the appointed time. Then I will make use of them for my purpose. As for Azazel and the others, you will be reunited with them soon enough." Sar frantically paced back and forth. "I must keep it together," he thought before speaking. "What's the matter, Or? Afraid of a little competition?" he stated in an obvious attempt to rouse Or. Or turned away, not even dignifying Sar's question with an answer. There was a great sorrow in his voice when he spoke. "You had everything. You were full of wisdom and perfect in stature. Your outer appearance was fashioned with the most precious of gems. You shined brighter than all other angelics. I placed you highest in command and gave you rule over the stones of fire within my cosmos. All of which you forcefully bestowed upon me," shouted Sar as he started to sense he was gaining an upper hand. Feeling more and more confident, Sar boasted, "I have created for myself a new ornament, an ornament that I prized over everything you offered. Your entire creation has always honored you because they knew of nothing else. But when presented with the opportunity, they betrayed you. My numbers would have been much greater had you not summoned us to the eternal tree so quickly. I already knew how many hearts were to be hardened by the tree of knowledge, and my call to afar was precisely fulfilled after all had rebelled," Or chose to say. His next words were so powerful that they permeated all of the heavens, reaching all the way to the abyss. "You offered nothing but deception and false security. You have selected your path, and what a horrifying course it is. You have corrupted wisdom by way of your supposed splendor. The ornament in which you have manifested is poison, bringing with it nothing but suffering and pain. You have become a pawn of your own deceit. Many angelics have been deceived, and they too will experience the destiny you have chosen. You are no longer permitted to bear the name Sar. From this moment on, you will be referred to as Nikal, the great deceiver. You have been stripped of your ornament and your power. When the Asoaville completes its course and your permanent prison is formed, I will cast you and the other fallen ones into the prepared furnace of fire within the outer blackness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and my virtue will be established for eternity, forever and ever." The newly dubbed Nikal looked puzzled by Or's declaration. He tilted his head slightly while his eyes drifted in thought. Forever and ever? What is that supposed to mean? He pushed this question aside and reestablished his firm gaze. "We shall see what will be established throughout eternity when I am the one seated upon your throne. You may win this battle, but you will not win the war." "You are dismissed," stated Or, tired of hearing Sar ranting. Shatar, as well as everyone else in the universe, heard Or's proclamation. With Or's dismissal, Shatar was called back into the hall. "Return Nikal to the place of his throne." "It will be my pleasure." Shatar was honored to be Nikal's escort back to Afar. Nikal looked at the two, confused. "I am to return to my throne on Afar?" Nikal asked, believing there must have been a mistake. "Why would he allow me to return without a fight? My men must be waiting for me there, and my words must have sufficiently challenged him." Feeling secure in his delusion, the newly named Nikau slightly bowed and turned to exit the Elenthial hall. "I know my way," he shot over his shoulder as he headed out the door. Shatar glanced at Or, who simply shook his head in vexation. "Go ahead, follow him to the eastern gate of Elenthial and close it behind him." The children sat in shock at the conversation they had just witnessed. Rashawn could hear several side discussions and murmurings pop up in the theater. He held his place and asked, "Who would like to begin this discussion?" "I will," Megan volunteered. "What is Or doing letting Nikau, go back to his throne? His throne is underwater. Doesn't he know that?" "Well," stated Morris, "I don't get why Or changed Sar's name, and—" Morris was interrupted by Connor's sarcastic comment. "Sar isn't the smartest one around, is he?" Suddenly, the room broke into a multitude of conversations. Rashawn took over. "Quiet. I can answer most of your questions, but they need to be answered in an orderly fashion. Let me answer the ones that have already been heard by everyone, and then we will cover any additional questions or comments." Rashawn slid off his stool and stood. "Everyone, up on your feet," he said, hoping the movement would help them listen to his explanation. "Morris, let us address your question first. Or had a reason to change Sar's name. Remember, just as Or told him, he was a representation of everything good. His appearance, his authority, and his nature all spoke of Or's goodness. But now Sar reflects nothing of Or. Therefore Sar could not continue to bear the name of the Elenthial prince. Think back to when Sar was renaming his princes. He gave them names that would reflect their evil nature. The ironic thing was that Sar, too, would be given a new name that would reflect his evil nature. Or chose the name Nikau, the deceiver, as a warning and a lesson to all that hear his name. Or is truth, therefore he cannot hide anything. "I hope that helps you, Morris," Rashawn said as he finished addressing the question. "Now, Megan, thank you for leading this discussion," Rashawn said, ready to tackle the issue of Nikau returning to his throne. "I agree, it does seem strange that Or would allow Nikau to return to the flooded and empty Stone of Fire. But while Or knows it is flooded, Nikau does not. Remember that all of that happened after Nikau, and the dragon were collected by the Ophan. I believe that part of Or's point is to let Nikau see what became of his kingdom while he was away. Nikau is not even aware of what has happened to his army." "You mean no one has told him that they lost?" Mia asked. "You would think that he would have figured that out when he landed in an Elenthial prison," Connor added. "I told you he wasn't the smartest one." "Well, Connor, his intelligence is not the point." Rashawn briefly changed the subject. "He is cunning and clever, and Nikau now bears the marks of a sociopath. He actually believes whatever he says. To him, he is never wrong, hence the name Nikau, the deceiver. Now, like I was saying, Nikau does not know what happened to his army." Rashawn returned to addressing Megan's concerns. "I bet he believes he is going back to the same afar he left, where his men will be waiting for their next set of orders. Actually, when he left, the Isoavel was everywhere, and when he returns, it will be there again. He does not know that the cosmos has been cleaned out and refilled. Besides the rude awakening that awaits Nikau, I am sure there are other reasons Or is sending him back. We will just have to watch closely for Or's reasons."